1A. Those present for the record are myself, Commissioner Nchaco, Commissioner Santos, and Commissioner Martinez. Commissioner Sanchez is excused, he's off island. And go straight to you, Miguel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 7 items on the agenda, but 3 we're requesting to table. 2.1 and 2.6 are both on hold for procurement reasons. And then 2.4 we were hoping to have ready, but we don't. So we only have 4 resolutions for you today. The first one is Resolution 16 FY 2023, and this is seeking approval of the Pressure Zone Realignment Phase 2 Construction Management Contract. If you recall, in our Water Resource Master Plan in 2018, there was a section in that master plan relating to pressure zone management in order to help us provide service pressures within our levels of service, but also to reduce water losses. We are getting ready to start Phase 2. We're completing Phase 1 of this construction project, but the Phase 2 construction management contract we'd like to get authorized. This work involves installation of new PRVs, flow metering, instrumentation, SCADA equipment, vaults, and some water line modifications. The locations, there's 15 listed in the justification here throughout the island. Many of these will, in addition to just being part of the pressure zone realignment, also include metering for our district metered area program, which also supports the water loss control program, which we're right in the middle of. The total cost for the CM fees for this 2-year project is $1.688 million. We're seeking that with a 10% contingency for a total of $1.86 million. As I mentioned, it's 24 months, the anticipated duration, and we're looking to award the construction contract in May of this year.
Okay. Okay, this is Phase 2?
Yes.
Are there any other phases, or is this it?
No, there will be, I think, a 3rd phase.
And then 3rd phase, and
Yes.
then that'll be the whole island?
Yes,
by then?
we
Okay.
would have had everything
Okay.
done by then, I think.
Okay. Any questions?
Funding sources?
The funding source for this is EPA grants. There were 16 firms that registered for the request for proposal. 6 firms submitted the actual proposals, and then a negotiation was conducted with the top qualified firm, Amorient, and they're recommended for award.
Okay.
How many phases you said?
There should be 3 phases. We're finishing up phase 1 construction right now.
So
This
what
is the one that was by the road.
So
Right,
your
there's-
road. Oh, the construction of
That's
zones?
part of it.
Okay.
So this is the construction management for phase 2. We want to get the CM on board before we
Put it
award
out
the-
to bid,
Right,
and then get a contractor to do the work.
right. I think it's already out to bid. Just the construction part.
Construction.
Construction is out to bid, and we're right now working through procurement.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
Just real quick, so explain the process to us. When does the AG get a contract once we're completed or during your process? How do we do it?
The AG should receive the contract before we execute it, so, yeah.
No, so when you're talking, I mean, you've already selected someone, right, for this particular discussion? I mean, phase, so at what point does he get an actual contract in his office to begin review? And do we set a timeline for the AG for review, right? He can't take forever.
So the AG issued, I guess, a letter in January saying that they would take 30 days. They would limit themselves to a review period of 30 days to review a contract. So that came this year with the new AG on board. So I guess that's their directive in place. For us, sending over...
Does that work for us?
Not in all cases, no.
And so when you give them something that says urgent, for lack of a better word, kind of urgent.
We've been transmitting with the requested response of 2 weeks.
And they said, I guess in that same letter, that they would consider it, depending on their workload. So they would consider, meeting our timeline. That's my interpretation of that letter, if their workload permits.
What was the average time from the last AG? What were you guys accustomed to?
We
had the
didn't-
SAG designation,
Yeah,
so we were able to.
so
do
we
it
didn't
in-house.
transmit any contracts for review to the AG, so this is a new process. Yeah. So we didn't have a 30-day time frame or window for their review.
For our engineering contracts and our construction contracts, we switched back in 2016 or 17 to using standard form contracts that are in wide use and put together by industry organizations. So you have professionals in the construction and engineering and legal field and construction specifications and contracts fields all collaborating to put together standard forms that are used throughout the industry. So using that type of standard form, really the only thing we're changing is special conditions. And so the review, once we set the documents up, it's a very efficient process, and that's how we've done it. To my knowledge, they're not familiar with that over there. So.
Yeah. That's also the reason, one of the reasons I believe why most of your contracts are not protested, most of your bids, you don't get a lot of protest.
We've been,
As opposed to GPA, which is doing new things. When you bid out a solar farm, there's no standard form of that,
Right,
you know?
right.
So there's big differences. And it's more inviting of protests, whereas because your contracts are all standardized, people have reviewed them, they conform to national standards, then it's harder for somebody to protest, because then it becomes simply a thing about what's the price. You want the lowest responsible bidder. Okay, so I just pointed that out. Because I was wondering, I said, we lost that big NG contract, the one we wanted for energy shifting, the solar farm to shift, and I was so upset with that. I was trying to figure out how come GWA doesn't get a lot of protests, and I think this is one of the reasons. It's not the only reason, but I think it's one of the reasons. Any other questions?
Were there any lessons learned from phase 1 that you incorporated into phase 2? As you've gone, not only just the CM side of it, but the actual, construction phase of it?
I think if there were any issues that we encountered during construction that would have involved revisions to the design, those were incorporated. In terms of the construction, I don't know that we've had too many issues with respect to the construction side. I think the larger issues are with regards to coordinating outages with our operational folks so that we can do some of these installs. So I would say yes in general, but I don't recall that there have been very many issues in terms of the construction contract.
And how many change orders were associated with phase 1 for the CM?
I'm not certain. I can get you that information.
It's okay, I'm just wondering if that's this new budget, the fee proposal, and the 10% based on the prior change orders, that's you're in budget there.
Yeah, I think so. If for phase 1, I think there may have been perhaps more change orders than we expected, and I'm going to say that part of the reason for that is, if you recall, we started phase 1 of the PRZ, and then we were also trying to implement the DMA. So where there were opportunities to use the PRZ vaults to put in meters for the district metered area program, then we ended up with some change orders.
So there
for
was
that.
there was a change in the scope of work too then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that's a good lesson to learn for phase 2.
Right, that's why they're included now.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions? No. Next one, Miguel.
Next resolution is 17 FY 2023, and this is seeking approval of an IDIQ contract for waterline replacement design for ACP pipe. Sorry, that's design NCM. Also, in our 2018 Water Resource Master Plan, there was a programmatic line item for regular pipe replacements for pipe in our inventory that's constructed of ACP, asbestos cement pipe. It's brittle, it's been giving us problems. A lot of the breaks main breaks that we end up having to respond to are because of ACP. So there has been a series of projects that were identified in the master plan, and this IDIQ contract intends to provide the design services and CM services necessary to knock those projects out. The intent is for us to do a initial task order for prioritization, and then once those priority projects are listed, issue separate task orders for design. The location of these projects will be island-wide. We're gonna hopefully focus on the areas that we already know we have frequent breaks. The total cost for the total length of piping, the design cost is estimated at $5.4 million. Our intent is to award 1.5 using EPA grant funding, 1.5 million using EPA grant funding with this initial award, and then we anticipate as we get over the next 5 years the additional bill funds that we would receive additional funding from EPA yearly to fund the remainder of the contract. We estimate this to be a 5-year contract, and there were 16 firms that submitted RFPs in response to the request. 16 firms registered, 8 firms submitted, and the firm of GHD was recommended by the engineering team for award.
Any questions? Commissioner Santos.
So Miguel, the total project cost is 5.4, and then the initial first contract is 1.5, and just, the next one, you come back to us when you're ready.
Yeah.
We do IDIQ status.
Yeah, we will issue, if the board approves, we will award with 1.5 million in grant funding to cover the initial task orders.
Okay,
And
then subsequently,
subsequent years, as we deplete this and we still have projects to do, we will secure additional grant funding and come back for additional authorization.
We still have a lot of work to do.
We do.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay, next.
Next is Resolution 19 FY 2023, and this is seeking approval for another IDIQ waterline replacement design and CM contract. This is a separate CIP line item in the 20-year master plan for waterline replacement projects. They are outlined in Table 8.9 and Table 8.9 and 8.12 of the Water Resource Master Plan, Volume 2. The intent here is to replace aging water lines within the system to reduce water losses and improve system reliability. Again, it will be based on an initial task order for prioritization of the listed projects, and then we would issue separate task orders to fund design moving forward for those specific projects. These are island-wide locations in terms of where we will be replacing these water lines. The estimated fee for the 5-year contract is $5.9 million. Again, we intend to award only 1.5 using EPA grant funding, and then fund additional years as is necessary from additional EPA annual funding. There were 23 firms that submitted or registered for the RFP, 8 firms submitted, and for this contract, Duane's Camacho and Associates was recommended by the engineering team for award.
Okay. Any questions? You seem to be getting a lot of people responding to your
Yeah, I
thing.
noticed that.
So is that, I mean, I'm taking that to be a sign that the military's not sucking all the talent out.
The engineering side, we've had better luck than on the construction side. We just had a bid for refurbishment of UGM equipment replacement in kind, very straightforward. We didn't get any bidders, so we have to put it back on.
So the engineering side, we have sufficient capacity on the engineering side.
So far.
Or so far.
but we're putting that capacity
To use.
yeah.
Yeah, the problem is then you need to get the construction part in. And that's,
Were the same 8 firms that responded, to the previous bid?
I think so.
Yes, can you walk me through that again? I'll go to, I don't know why I'm wanting to look at it, but help me understand how you guys do the evaluation. Because on the previous one, GHD got the better score, and then you go to this one, it's Dueñas and Camacho. So if you can just walk me through how you score 79, 84, and so forth.
So the individual selection panel members do the evaluations, right? I'm not involved in that
Yeah,
process,
okay.
but each individual member scores it based on what is presented in relation to.
But there, for example, if you go to page 30 of those books,
Sorry.
it reads, it doesn't say what you're evaluating, it just gives a score, so I'm gonna say, is that for presentation?
Yes.
Is that- I mean,
There
I
is-
know there's a category, right?
There is detail.
Okay, yeah.
It's
so-
just not included in this
Correct,
record, but
correct.
this is just the summary. So, if you're, I'm not,
Yeah, no, I'm just using as an example because as Commissioner Jalco, it's one day apart, the same people with almost identical as the same tomorrow, the same firms.
But-
Okay, so, yeah, just
but
kinda-
the
I don't know why I
selection,
decided to
the
do it.
evaluation criteria in each solicitation is based on the requirements of that project.
Oh, okay.
So for the ACP pipe replacement, the evaluation criteria and that what they present in their proposal should be specific
To
to
that.
line replacement projects with these type of challenges. So the evaluators will go through and evaluate what the responses in the proposals, the experience of the team members, and their performance, their past performance on similar projects, and score them that way. And then what you're looking at here are just the total scores for a whole set of evaluation criteria, which the details of which are
Yeah.
included in the file.
So who decides on the contractor? These guys.
the numbers.
The review committee.
On the contractor
Yeah,
or the
construction ones.
designer?
These guys are the CM.
They, when the bids come in, the CM typically will assist us in validating the bids, making sure that everything that was supposed to be submitted was submitted.
Okay.
Help us with an evaluation of their responsibility or their responsiveness, right? And then they make a recommendation, which is reviewed by the engineering team and either concurred or not. And they go, if they have questions, they go back and forth until they're satisfied. And then the recommendation.
For the contractor.
On the evaluation committees, they're all the same, right? I mean, it seems like,
Not necessarily.
well, the last two, I believe the names are all,
All the same.
yeah.
Yeah,
there's committees.
So how often do you rotate the
it
evaluators?
depends on the project. If it's for water, these are both water projects, so the CIP water team and water engineers are primarily the ones who are involved.
For wastewater
For
project.
wastewater, it's a different
Different
team,
group.
different set of engineers. Sometimes there might be crossover. But the
Thank God we
procedures
have
and the
engineers.
SOPs in place for this were developed with US EPA a long time ago, so they've been established. Our team is real good at executing them,
Yeah.
and they do it by the book.
Yeah. Back when GWA when the CC became established, we had people coming from EPA who helped us really set up our engineering people. We didn't have a lot of engineering talent. We had some engineers, but that's when we started building. Thank God for that. Okay,
Any further
Next.
questions? I'll ask Telling to do the last resolution.
Good morning. This is a joint resolution for GWA and GPA for authority to establish bank accounts with the Bank of Guam for collections from cannabis related establishments. The Cannabis Board recently started accepting applications from businesses, and in that regard reached out to us I spoke to the Bank of Guam, which is our depository, and was told that we needed to set up a separate bank account for these businesses so that they can comply with their reporting requirements. Once the money goes into that account, we can sweep it into our operating account. There's no restrictions against use of those funds. The setting up of the account is a way for the bank to meet their reporting requirements. So the other thing that will likely be happening is these establishments will not be able to use credit cards or debit cards, so they can't pay by phone or use our online facility. So they'll have to come into the office to make the payments. The bank will charge $250 a sweep. I'm anticipating that would probably be once a month. And because these are likely to be small amounts, at least at first, the fees related to maintenance analysis should be fairly small. We want to get ahead of the game, set up the bank accounts, but we'll likely not use them until these establishments are licensed and doing business. The bank fees will be paid using GWA revenues, and as I mentioned, we are at the Bank of Guam. Our bond indenture, per our bond indenture, they are our depository and are required to maintain our revenue funds. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? I only have one. So this is strictly cash that these people would be using to make payments. You can't use their credit cards, they can't use checks?
My understanding is that they might be able to use checks, but it will really depend on the bank that they're doing business with.
Oh, okay. That's right, they have to deposit their money into their checking account first, or whatever account they have, and then bring cash or check to us. Okay. Because we're doing this with Bank of Guam is like every other bank, FDIC insured, so they have to comply with the federal regulations. Right. So the federal regulations now allow for this. They haven't taken away the Fed laws on cannabis being a controlled substance, but right. They're recognizing how to deal with the money.
And there are reporting requirements that the bank must comply with, and that's okay. Hence the request for a separate bank account.
Okay. Do you have a requirement when you accept a check that the check has to be from an institution that is FDIC? Because there are banks that are not FDIC. I don't know if the Bank of Saipan finally got FDIC approval. But
I don't believe that's one of the requirements.
That's not one of the requirements? Okay. Just I'm curious. Okay.
What kind of fee are we talking about? Because this is just the application, right? This is not for the meter.
No.
What are you talking about here?
This is for any funds associated with
No, but
them.
I'm talking when the permit comes in, this is the permit to get a size meter into the operation?
So it's the licensing starts with, their process starts with someone getting an ID. Once that person has the ID and it's approved by
The board. Cannabis
then
board.
they can apply for a license clearance. So they apply for the license clearance, and we are on the list of agencies that must provide a clearance. So we're working through that process now. They submit their application to us, and then the way the regulations were written, there wasn't any specificity on what they need to submit to us. So we're establishing that now, giving it to Rev and Tax, who is initiating these processes, and then their applicants will have a list of what they need to come in to get a clearance from us. They'll bring that in, we'll review the information, we'll either reject or provide the clearance based on the information they submit. And at that point, I don't know if they're paying any fees yet.
Not necessarily. So they, whether or not it's a new meter or
Right.
existing meter.
So once we do the clearance, then they, and if they get every other agency to do the clearance, then they are allowed to construct or renovate or to establish their business, but before they can open their doors, they have to come back for a permit to operate, and again, we have a check. We go through, we see if, when we gave them the clearance, this is what they needed to do. We go back and we inspect that they did it, everything is copacetic, then we will sign off, and at least from us, and then they can get their permit to operate. At that point, that will involve getting the meter established, if it is in an existing facility, and any fees that are paid in association with our normal customer application process, those will go into this separate account.
It's gonna be FDIC insured, because we don't need a run at the bank.
Oh,
They'll likely be paying in cash.
Yeah.
yeah.
They'll be smoking at the bank.
Well, why is the bank imposing the requirement on us to monitor the transaction? Why isn't the bank doing it themselves?
They need to figure out a way how to report it and to isolate those amounts. And this is the easiest way for them.
We're the gatekeeper.
I know it's easy for them.
Yes,
I'm asking why are they making us do it for them?
Well,
we're the gatekeepers.
I don't know if it might be easy for us too, if, as opposed to having to change our system to account for this specific type of business and then specific type of payment. I mean, in some respect, we're gonna have to do that anyway, because we have to make sure that the accounts are flagged so that they are not allowed to use credit cards.
Credit cards and other things.
That's what I'm saying is I don't think it matters to the vendor. I think it matters to the revenue, the businesses, how they manage their revenue, right? What they do with it. As a vendor or a supplier, who cares what they, how we get their payment or how it's tracked? I don't understand that. Just seems like a lot more work that just.
I have reached out to the bank and asked them if they've actually put this in writing, if there's a directive, and I think it's so new that they haven't.
Feeling their way through it.
Like the GWA doesn't have a policy for the cannabis industry, right? A meter is a meter, right? You don't differentiate between.
We don't yet, but this is forcing us.
Yeah.
This is forcing us to develop business processes that need to be documented. So we're in the process of doing that.
I'm just wondering what difference does it make if you're in the cannabis industry or you're growing corn, you're buying water.
Yeah.
What difference does it make to the utility on the payment?
I don't think
We
it
have
makes
to
a
comply
difference.
with these regulations that were set up. So we don't have to
No,
do that
no,
for a corn
no,
farmer, but we gotta do it for.
But
No,
that's
no,
it.
no.
I don't think the regulations on us. The regulations on the cannabis business owner.
But
right?
we're listed in the law that our part is to provide the clearance, right? And so.
Oh, in the on
In
the
their rules and regulations, we're listed.
the cannabis.
Yeah, I think the short answer is the fact that the governments are trying to identify who these people are and keep track of them. And instead of them doing it, they're having us all do it. Every checkoff has to be done, and they can trace the money and know where it comes from and who the owners are.
It's because the revenue stream is still coming from a controlled substance,
Yeah.
which is still prohibited under federal law. And if we're depositing our money into a federally insured bank, that's the bank's way of segregating the money so they can report it. And so that's why, because there are federal laws, like I think it's the Bank Secrecy Act, et cetera, which prohibit, deposit of monies from the drug trade,
Yep.
et cetera.
Right, but that's
Yeah.
on the business side. That's their revenue, right? Not their cost, their payments. I
And
can
I think-
understand they're regulating what they do with the money they receive from the sale of their cannabis, but I don't understand why the utility as a cost portion of that business has to monitor how much they're paying for water. Anyway,
I think I
we wanna
agree
use
with you,
that
it's just the government, and I don't
Right.
mean just local or federal, but it's the government keeping track. And instead of them having to do it, they're making everybody along the
I know,
line.
but we're tracking their costs, not their revenue.
No,
That
no,
doesn't
no.
make any, that's what you're interested in, is what the tax on their revenue, right?
Yeah, but you're also interested in where this money comes from. I don't,
I
I
need to
think,
share something with you. I attended a GPA marketing conference, and it was the state of California wanted to share their news about how to handle cannabis money. All they said is that be prepared to shut your office down, because when the money comes in, the smell is so bad. It wasn't a joke, I thought, what?
We're gonna have
Oh,
to
no,
start
that they actually
testing the
fumigate the place, because, I mean, they came in with tens of thousands of dollars, and they set it on a kind of thing, and then they describe, you know, it's bundles of cash. And then the other great part was, they wanted to know if they could prepay for the entire year. I said, what? And they said, yeah.
Got a lot of
Because they
cash.
got enough money to prepay.
That's
you
a lot
for
of cash.
For a year.
Oh, well.
Yeah. But
Maybe we
anyways,
should
just-
ask them to wash it before they bring it in.
You gotta prepare your, how to accept. Yeah, truly money laundering. Yeah. Real story. And they said, yeah, it's an actual thing that happens. You gotta-
Well, you know, the
Shut down
thing,
the place, 'cause it's
That's too much
strong,
amount.
they said.
well, it's like I remember some stories where they said, you know, cocaine, they use roll-up bills and everything to do their cocaine, and there's cocaine in all this money. So you can't say, well, you're doing cocaine because your money has it. No, I traded all the money. Anyway, enough fun and games. Is there anything else, Miguel?
No other resolutions?
Sure, go ahead.
So the fees here is, the bank charges the $250 per sweep, right?
$2.50 per sweep.
Yeah, and then the bank fees will be paid using GPA, water revenues.
GPA and GWA utility revenues, yes.
So who made up the fees? The banks, right?
Yes, that's.
Yes, that's their normal sweep.
Yeah. So do we meet, are we okay with that fee? I mean, the cost, you know, maintaining.
It's your standard.
It only applies when we transfer the funds. So that's, normally for those types of accounts, it's daily? I mean, once this gets, once there's sufficient revenue going through it, I suppose it'll be daily, so it's like $2.50 a day.
But you could you accumulate this money? Once a month, okay. Well, until you see a volume, then you can say, hey, we want that money after all.
So the money goes to the bank, and then the bank, through the flow of funds, and it's given back to us in the month, and that's
Okay, okay. Enough.
I did have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Regarding phase two, have we, I know we had a briefing.
PRZ?
Oh, yeah, PRZ and the DMA. I know we had a briefing early on and they put up some, initial data. But has any corrective actions resulted from phase one, and what have we done and what have we seen the results of?
The briefing that I think you're referring to is for the DMA project, right?
Yeah.
Separate from the pressure zone realignment. But the initial data, we are continuing to do the leak detection and we repair the leaks as they are found. So if that's the type of corrective action you're referring to, yeah, we are continuing to do that.
No, I just meant from the DMA side, right? And the whole idea was to identify that, okay, you have that district, right? You see this outflows, you have you bounce that against your cells, you're saying, okay, we have a leak in this area. So like, has it resulted in leaks that you otherwise wouldn't have found?
Yes.
Without it? Yeah.
Yes.
And those, what are the results of it? Have you seen, after correcting the leaks, what is it translating into as far as dollars?
Not revenue water.
So we can quantify the dollar amount. I don't have figures like that
not
off the top of my head,
but-
but in terms of,
Is it material?
it is material. We've seen losses upwards of 60% in a specific zone, and after we apply the leak detection, it has gone down 10, 15%. What we are seeing though is over time, that climbs back up, and it doesn't, keeping it down in the normal, I guess what is expected with a normal distribution system. Once you knock it down, it should stay down for a while, and then you go back annually and you check it, but it should stay down. What we're seeing is in certain areas, it comes back up, which is an indication that the infrastructure is beyond its useful life, because it's whack-a-mole. We fix here, we get a new break over there. And those, our team, our engineer managing this, our water distribution manager, and the consultant have conferred, and indicated that these are areas where we need pipe replacement programs in order to make the water loss control effective. So that's the reason why we've got these contracts to prioritize based on the available information, including this new. So we start with what's in the master plan, but we're also evaluating it against what we're seeing with the DMA. And we get monthly progress reports from our team on that. And that information will be used to help establish a new priority list of which projects, pipe replacement projects we do first.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Please, the
So-
board, we can move to the
Well,
management report, or?
Sure, management report.
Real
Yep,
briefly, and then.
sure.
Sorry, I don't know which page it is on the board book, but just to start with the operations update for February. For production, we had production of 39 million gallons a day on average for the month of February. Out of our 120
Page
wells,
64.
89 were active for the month, and we had 20 down needing repairs. And our total production for the month was about 1.09 kgals. Tumon Maui, the next page indicates that performance was right where we expected to be, around 1 million gallons a day. For the distribution system, our water booster pump station operability was at 96.9% for the month, so holding steady for February. On the next page, in the distribution system, our tank levels, we recovered from some low levels at the end of January, so through February we were okay. You'll see in March we had some issues again, so those numbers will dip when we get to next month's report. For wastewater collections, the sewer pump station operability, we were at 88.2%, holding steady. I apologize, on the board books, the graph might be incorrect, but it's correct on the PowerPoint slide. We'll get that fixed for the final. For CCTV and inspection and sewer cleaning, our target was 4.7 for the month of February, and we finished at 5.16 miles, so a little bit ahead of our target on that. For wastewater treatment in February, at the 3 major plants, we disposed of 825,000 pounds of sludge at a cost of $74,000. You can see the average flows for the month of February, slightly less than January. Less rain on that month, and Agana and Northern District, as you can see, are our largest flows, and they held pretty steady. For asset management, through February of 23, our PM to CM ratio was 74% of our work orders were preventive maintenance, 26% corrective maintenance. And the completion rates on those were 87% for PM and 90% for corrective maintenance. In terms of corrective maintenance, leak repairs versus equipment CM, the ratio was 54% leaks and 46% equipment. And of that, of those work orders, 96% of the leak work orders were completed, and 90% of the equipment work orders were completed through February of 2023. On our one Guam update, our next inspection for the Tumon Maui well by the Navy will be in April. We have requested increases in production rates for both Tumon Maui and AG1, which is on Air Force property, to match the issued well permits by Guam EPA. We're still waiting on DOD to give us the go-ahead to do that. We did meet in February, the CFO and I did meet with the Navy officials to go through a revised service agreement to cover all of the utility services. We did discuss the model of the agreement that would take. We've done some research to get examples of contracts or service agreements in other jurisdictions. The agreement would cover billing, metering, and a water offset or exchange program, which we continue to advance in accordance with the PUC's order on this to seek a water exchange program, and also the provision of other services. So we do have a target to get this drafted and in place by June of next year. On property transfers, we still have a couple that we're waiting on. Sewer laterals in Nimitz Hill, we're waiting for the Navy on that, and I believe they are waiting for Historic Preservation Office. And then the other the other Maui well that is being federal excess property that's being turned over to GWA. We put in a request for that. We're still waiting for that to go through. From my understanding, it is still with the governor. She has not accepted the property yet. There are a few other easement and access issues listed that we're still trying to work through, including the Navy's access to GWA property for Seti Bay reforestation. This is an environmental project that the Navy's required to do, and we give them access to property through our property so that they can conduct those efforts. We have requested a wastewater sewer line easement for it's an existing sewer line on the Andy South Marble properties. We're waiting for that to come through as well. And then out near the feeder water treatment plant, the Schofield Heights area, and we're trying to get right of entry agreements so that we can properly service the customers that are connected to lines that were formerly Navy lines in those areas. We did get approval for connecting redundant water line for the Northern District Wastewater Treatment Plant to the Navy line there along the road to Tengisan Beach. And we're still working out issues for the water line at Cabras. I believe that's going to go to, the Navy wants to get rid of the line. GPA wants to take ownership of it for exclusive use for their power plants. Moving on to the court order summary, no change on this. We did have a reduction in SSOs for February over the month of January, only one. So EPA was very pleased with that. We're still working through, on the next page, several land acquisition issues, mostly relating to tanks and the Aspen Springs, which is still being held up by Park Service. Nothing really to report on that, but we're still trying to work through it. And then the last couple pages are our leak statistics. The most important one, for the month of February, we maintained our backlog of leak repair work orders under 20 to finish out the month. For accounts receivable, moving on to the next page, a slight increase, I think, for February, but still in line with pre-COVID levels for accounts receivable greater than 60 days for residential customers, and we're also a slight uptick, I think, in February for accounts receivable for commercial customers greater than 60 days, but still well below pre-COVID levels.
Okay, Tully.
So the first slide is a picture of our key financial indicators. Our debt service coverage remains at 1.3, cash on hand at 310 days. Our collection ratio went down a little bit, and that was mostly tied to our government receivables. We did receive a large payment from DOE in early March, so our March collection ratio should be better. We billed 28 days in February compared to the 32 last month. Our accounts receivable days was at 38, and payable days was at 34. We lost about 6 folks between January and February. Our FTE level is down to 354. Our water demand was below January, but I think that is partially due to the fact that we had less billing days in February compared to March. And then we have our water and wastewater customer counts. The next slide is a picture of our revenues against our expenditures. The reason why we're able to keep our debt service coverage at 1.3 is because of the use of our ARPA money. So to date, we've used about 6.45 of the 12.4 million available. Going on to the next page, this is a picture of our water revenues. The top line is our top line is revenue and our bottom line is demand. We continue to see a reduction in the percentage of our demand coming from residents as we see our hotel demand going back up and our commercial demand. The next slide is wastewater. Again, the revenues look a little bit different because of the way that we charge our residential customers, but the demand mirrors what we're doing, what our water demand is. The next slide is a pictorial view of water and wastewater demand over the last 3 years. This is a picture of our expenditures. As you might notice, our power went up almost double. It was 6.5 last year. It's at 11.5 this year. Going on to the next page, this is a different way to look at our expenditures. This is showing it by our business units, and you know, as you can see, a big share of our expenditures are in our ops groups. For water production and treatment, that's about 27% of revenues, and then the next largest percentage is water distribution, followed by wastewater treatment at 12%, and then wastewater collection at 8%. The reason our executive management is as large as it is because we that includes our legal expenditures, our PEC and CCU expenditures, our insurance, and so some of the common expenditures end up being categorized in that area. The next slide shows our water and wastewater demand versus revenues. And then the next slide shows what our collection ratio is as compared to our revenues for water and wastewater. And then this is a little bit different from what Miguel showed you earlier. The slide on the left shows our receivables with our inactive accounts, and on the right without inactive accounts. And as I said earlier, we're seeing a slowdown in our government collections, but that picked up in March. And then the next slide is just a picture of our outstanding debt service. Happy to answer any questions.
You normally give us a schedule for the government ones, other than GWA, how's the hospital?
The hospital has 170,000 outstanding.
How far off? Is that more than 60?
They have 40, 80, about 90K over 60 days. Over about 90K over 60 days.
Yeah.
What page?
156. 40, 80. Yeah, about just over 100K over 60. Just about 100K.
It's Schedule H in the.
Yeah, I get right.
Yeah.
Okay, you said DOE just gave us a large check?
Yeah, almost 600,000.
So they're current? They're current then? Or no? They're still 31 to 60. They gotta have them.
They still have some of the 31 to 60 days.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else? Anything else?
Oh, I wanted to mention that, sorry, our audit, I just got a message from our auditors, and they're running behind. They're, this is their first time that they're looking at some of the schedules. They're still asking questions, or they're still analyzing the OPEB report to see how much of that gets allocated to us. It has been in the past a significant amount, so they want to make sure they get it right. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention is the OPA is doing a GWA-wide credit card audit. So we have provided them statements for the last couple of years, and not quite sure what they're looking for, but they did ask for our SOPs last month. But it is GWA-wide. That's it.
Well, I guess they want to find out why we don't charge as much as the government of Guam charges for using a credit card. That too. Okay, anything else?
Just want to remind you that we did request executive session.
Right, so if you're done with everything so far?
Yes.
Okay, a motion to,
Move to recess and go into executive session.
is there a second?
Second.
Second, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed nay, motion carries 4 votes.
That's being discussed. Thank you, Mo.
We weren't in executive session scheduled for,
No, the one on the 30th, there's no need for an executive session. We're going to do that in open session.
I just looked at the CM charges from PhD and